straight and right. By the light of the word.
Today on Light of the Word with Pastor Ray.
But right now, here's the word that's being spoken. You want to preclude and exclude and save yourself from making rash vows or foolish statements? Pray. Be men and women of prayer. Start your day in prayer and then make prayer the attitude of your day. Father, I'm connected with you. I'm seeking you. The situation has come before me now. What is it and how do I handle it?
Open your heart to us, Lord, so we can know your word. We come before you, Jesus. Speak to our hearts as we discover your love for us. How wide, how deep, how far. Pour into us so we can learn to follow. One surrender at a time. You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and right. By the light of the word.
Prayer is essential to our daily lives. Without communication with God, we have no idea what He plans for us. Without prayer, we wouldn't have the lifeline we need when things go poorly, and we wouldn't know how God wants us to handle day-to-day situations that pop up. In today's message, Pastor Ray asks us to consider how much more productive our lives would be if we included prayer in our daily routine. God desires a close relationship with us, and we can achieve this by spending time with Him in prayer every day and all the time. Well, let's join Pastor Ray for today's edition of Light of the Word from the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 15.
Shall we turn to 1 Samuel chapter 14 today? Very rich word. Well, back in chapter 13, if you remember, and then going into our first 23 verses of chapter 14, Jonathan attacked the garrison of the Philistines. So the Philistines had moved back into the land that was promised to Israel. So Jonathan had all that he could stand because he couldn't stand anymore. He went, he made an attack against the Philistines. They ain't going to take none of it. So the Philistines now are flooding into the promised land. 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and more men who had swords because the Philistines had the edge, the advantage, the expertise in metallurgy. They had superior swords. In fact, as we read, there's only 2 swords in all of Israel. Jonathan has one and Saul. The rest of the army, they're fighting with pitchforks or clubs or farming equipment, whatever it might be, but they don't have the weaponry. Josephus, the historian, says the estimate is 300,000 Philistines with swords. So here's where they are. Jonathan, his armor bearer. Hey, let's just go see what God will do. Faith, they go up the hill and they attack and they have a battle with 20 Philistines within a 50-yard radius and they defeat them all. Then all of a sudden the Philistines' camp starts going, what's going on here? They think they're being overrun by the Israelis, and so they start turning and hacking against one another, and God then brings this earthquake, causes more confusion. Saul sees what's going on from across the valley and says, let's go. Let's rally the men and let's go. And so there was this great slaughter. But we ended and we pick up in verse 24. Saul makes a foolish vow that no one should eat. And boy, I tell you, this word today, every time we open, I go, this is amazing. Well, this word today, again, just amazing for life. Wherever you are in life, whatever place you are in life, the wisdom that God gives us and the word that He reveals to us through this passage today. Let's pick it up in verse 24 through 26. And the men of Israel were distressed that day, for Saul had placed the people under an oath, saying, Cursed is the man who eats any food until evening, before I have taken vengeance on my enemies. So none of the people tasted food. Now all the people of the land came to a forest, and there was honey on the ground. And when the people had come into the woods, there was the honey dripping, but no one put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. I want you to see something there, in that this is the promised land, right? This is the land that God gave them. And what did he say to them that this land would be? It would be a land what? Flowing with milk and honey. And is it not flowing with milk and honey? But is it not interesting of what the environment is? 300,000 men with swords, 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen of the Philistines who have come in and camped against them, are oppressing them. But do you notice? There's still a land flowing with milk and honey. And I want to tell you, wherever you're at today, whatever's going on in your life, even in the midst of darkness, oppression, the enemy encamped against you, even against odds that seem insurmountable, God still has sweetness in the middle of it. And we can forget that. We can forget that that's who he is. We can forget that's his promise. But Psalm 119, the whole Psalm 119 is about his word and the power of it and the sweetness of it. But Psalm 119, verse 103, how sweet are your words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth. God will bring you a word that's sweeter than honey, regardless of what situation you're in. And there's just a place, as we're going to see Jonathan reach out and take it in, take the sweetness of it in. Because I will promise you this, and I can tell you from the life of it and experience of it, regardless of what's going around me, if I will sit, God will give me a sweet word. Even when all seems lost, even when all seems hopeless, even when it seems like the enemy has the upper, I sit and he gives me a sweetness of his word. And he'll do that for you. And I want to tell you, this is what my pastor told me. Do not forfeit what you know to be true in the midst of a storm. And it's easy for us to go, well, I thought this was true. But then you come into a storm and you go, maybe it's true. Or maybe you come into a storm and you go, I can't believe it's true anymore. I'm reminded those two disciples on the road to Emmaus. In Matthew 28, after the resurrections, the angel said, hey, go tell the disciples he is risen from the dead, and indeed he's going before you into Galilee. That's way north. There you will see him. But in Luke 24, we read these two disciples, they're heading 7 miles, I say, in the opposite. No one really knows where Emmaus is, this road to Emmaus. That's not clear for sure, but what we know is it's not Galilee. 7 miles from Jerusalem. These guys are going the wrong way. But isn't it amazing? Who goes finds them? Going the wrong way, on the wrong road, disobedience if you want to get down to it, or we'll just say lack of faith, because he said, go to Galilee. But who shows up? And what does he do? He speaks and he opens. Here they are in their disappointment, in their darkness. And what does he do? He opens the scriptures to them and starts laying the word out for them. And after Jesus leaves them, verse 32 of Luke 24, what did they say? And they said to one another, Did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us on the road and while he opened the scripture to us? Oh, it's dark. It's Resurrection Sunday, but it's dark. We thought he was going to be alive. We thought it was a new day, but he's done. He's dead. And yet he shows up. And what's he do? Sweet manna, sweet word, honey. And they feast on it, and it burns in their heart. And that's what God would say and speak to you. Verse 27 through 30, and I know he's got honey for us today, sweetness. Verse 27 through 30. But Jonathan had not heard his father's charge, the people with the oath. Therefore he stretched out the end of the rod that was in his hand and dipped it in a honeycomb and put his hand to his mouth, and his countenance was brightened. Then one of the people said, your father strictly charged the people with an oath, saying, cursed be the man who eats. Cursed means you're going to die. Who eats food this day, and the people were faint. But Jonathan said, my father has troubled the land. Look now how many countenance has brightened because I tasted a little of this honey. How much better if the people had eaten freely today of the spoils of their enemy, which they found. For now would there not have been a much greater slaughter among the people. In verse 31, now they had driven back the Philistines that day from Michmash to Ajalon. Michmash to Ajalon is about 18 miles. Who here would like to go for an 18-mile walk with me after service? And I promise not to preach the whole time. Just we'll walk. Who's here is up for an 18-mile walk? That's a long way. Average human, 3 miles an hour. That's 6 hours. Now, let's just say you're fighting Philistines along the way. How long is this going to take you? One of the most craziest things I ever did in my life. I thought it was spiritual. When I first got saved, anybody remember cassette tapes? So I got saved, and every day I would go home from work, and I'd be home at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. I got on my bicycle, had a road bike, with the bars that, you kind of lean on. And I had a little pack there, and I had a cassette tape. And I would ride my bike for 90 minutes. And I was able to get in like 2 of Pastor Malcolm Wild's sermons. 1 of Pastor Chuck's, because Pastor Chuck's sermons were like 90 minutes. And so I would get in 2 of these Bible studies, and I was just, it was glorious. Then someone says, hey, Ray, let's do the ride across Florida. You dip your back tire in the Atlantic Ocean at dawn, and you have till sunset to dip your front tire in the Gulf of Mexico, 170 miles. The most I had ever ridden at that point was 30 miles. And I said, let's do it. So I start training, and I start training hard, and the day of the ride comes, the most I still had ever ridden was like 50. So I was like 120 miles off of what would be, I didn't even train that I could do half of the ride, but I was like, let's do it. I remember I was at the halfway point, dying, saying, you are so stupid. Why would you do this? Forget listening to Bible studies or anything. And you're watching your ticker, and it's like an hour goes by and you go, I did like 5 miles. You're just dying all along the way. The guys who finished first, I was at the halfway point. They had already dipped their tire, was in their car, and met me at the halfway point in their cars and were beeping. They had biked 170 miles and drove 85 miles in their car, and they were already done. My point, though, man, you're dying, and you think you're going to die, then you come past the station that they have, and you just put your hand out as you ride by, and you grab an apple, or you grab a honey biscuit, or you grab, of course, water or orange juice. And it was continually this instant fusion of life and energy. Here these guys are, they're going 18 miles. They're going 18 miles on foot, and they're fighting along the way. They're carrying their pitchforks and their clubs or whatever this might be. Yet Saul gives this vow, and back in verse 2 of this chapter, it said, now one day Jonathan, verse 1, his son Saul said to the young man who bore his armor, come up, let us go to the Philistine garrison that is on the other side. But he did not tell his father. Verse 2, and Saul was sitting in the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree, which is in Migron. Well, no wonder Saul ain't thinking about food. Anybody know what that is? It's a pomegranate. What do you do when you sit under a pomegranate tree? You eat pomegranates, I'm sure. Man, those things are awesome. You ever eat? They are sweet like honey, but man, they are carb loaded. So here he is, Saul. Yeah, it's easy for you to say, no man should eat. Well, because he's been sitting under a pomegranate tree eating pomegranates for who knows how long, so I'm not hungry. And so he makes this rash vow, and that's truly what we have here, is we have this rash vow. Ecclesiastes 5 says, do not be rash with your mouth, and let not your heart utter anything hastily before God. For God is in heaven and you on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. Back in verse 18 and 19. And Saul said to Ahijah, bring the ark of God here. For at that time the ark of God was with the children of Israel. Now it happened when Saul talked to the priest that the noise which was in the camp of the Philistines continued to increase. So Saul said to the priest, withdraw your hand. Hey, Christian, you always have time to pray. If he would have prayed back there rather than getting into the rash vow, you want to give your protection against rash vow. You want to give your protection to saying something that you will regret later. Your ultimate protection is that you're on earth and God's in heaven. And you say, I got time to pray. And even if the answer is clear, in this case, the Philistines are on the run, go there, you still have to pray and go, how do we fight? What's the battle plan? Because I guarantee you, here's the battle plan God would not have given fast. You're going to do an 18-mile fight and forced march. Tell everybody to fast so they're faint and there's nothing left in them. If Saul, as Jonathan said, would not have made this rash vow, he could have utterly destroyed the Philistines. And we're going to read the Philistines regroup, and they'll have to fight them again and again, and we're going to get into that, and we'll be building on that. But right now, here's the word that's being spoken. You want to preclude and exclude and save yourself from making rash vows or foolish statements? Pray. Be men and women of prayer. Start your day in prayer, and then make prayer the attitude of your day. Father, I'm connected with you. I'm seeking you. The situation has come before me now. What is it and how do I handle it? Every morning I have these points that I pray, and it's not works, but it works. It's not works that, oh, I got to do this, but it works for me because of the way I think and all these things. And I have this one point, and it's wisdom. Give me the wisdom that you gave Solomon so that I can make wise decisions, and I can guard my mouth, and I can guard my actions. And if he would have done that, oh, the victory. But here's what he does. He makes this vow. He puts this rule, and you know, the Spirit of God's moving. Great victory could be had. Great victory is being had. God is ridding the enemies of the land. And Saul, what does he do? He puts in a man-made rule. It almost seems like it's impossible when the Spirit of God starts to move that man can just step back and go, let's watch the Spirit of God move. Man has this thing within them of, let's put some rules in place. Let's write a procedure. Let's write a book about it. Let's go on circuits and say, this is what you do. This is what you don't do. And let's put this in place, man-made rules, so that we can what? Keep the Spirit moving. Man-made rules so we can keep the Spirit moving. It's ridiculous. Let all things be done decently in order, absolutely. But you know what? Quench not the Spirit. And so here we see it, and there's just a balance to it of let's be decent, let's have some guidance, but let's not put God in the box that he can no longer move. I remember, this is a Calvary Chapel story that gets told over and over about Pastor Chuck. The hippies are getting saved. And, just a point about that, Calvary Chapel was growing as a conservative church. It wasn't like there was 20 people, then hippies started getting saved. There was a couple hundred people. And so they were growing and they were expanding and they were building their facility and they had their pews. They had their communion cup holders. You ever see those in those pews, behind the pew, those little holes? And so they put the communion cups so when they do communion, people just reach forward rather than passing the communion. Well, the hippies are coming in. And the hippies are getting saved. The Jesus movement is in full bloom, and they're coming to Calvary Chapel, and God's doing this amazing work. And they'd come in their dirty blue jeans and no shoes. And my friend Larry Taylor, who got saved in that movement, he said, Ray, we would be sitting there, and we thought the communion holes were for us to put our toes in. I was like, why would you think that? He goes, I don't know. But it just felt good, We sat there, our feet up, and we were putting our toes in the communion holders. And, of course, the older people were like, that's disgusting. So they come to Chuck, and they say, Chuck, these hippies, they're ruining the carpet. Their bare feet are ruining our carpet. We got to make some rules. No shoes, no service. Can you believe that? Can our mind comprehend that? And Chuck goes, rip out the carpet. Then just rip out the carpet. If carpet is gonna prevent us from ministering to people, rip out the carpet. And that's a story that is told over and over, and we love to tell that story. So I go there 20 years after the Jesus movement. It's so big now that Chuck doesn't even know anything about carpeting or toes and where they're going and stuff like that. But I show up at Costa Mesa on a Monday night for the evangelistic outreach that Greg Laurie would lead. And so I come into the sanctuary with my bottle of water, and it was like literally that hand on the shoulder. We're like, whoa. And he's like, excuse me, this usher, excuse me. No water in the sanctuary. You got to leave. I was like, okay, sure. The first thing I say to myself, so much for tear out the carpet. Because now it's like that water going to ruin the carpet. And I know Chuck don't know nothing of this. But as the Spirit keeps moving, men have to somehow put these rules into place because we think that's going to keep the things of the Spirit moving. Because I say to myself, what if I wasn't saved? And somebody put their hand on me like that, would I have said, oh, I feel the love of Christ here? I would have left and not heard the word.
You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and right. By the light of the word.
The Word of God is so applicable to the lives of all Christians from the time it was written long into the future. As we continue to study the book of 1 Samuel, we'll learn to listen to God from Samuel and how to love our Creator with all our heart from David. We can even learn from Saul, who failed time and again to follow the one who set him on the throne in the first place. Through each life we see in this book, we're exposed to God's mercy and power, and it will leave us with a choice to make. Will we follow God or try to go on our own way? If you've been exploring what it means to live for your Creator and you're ready to take the next step, we'd like to let you know that we're here to help. We'd love to pray for you, and we'll do our best to answer any questions you have. Please send an email to mail@ccaac.org or give us a call at 443 443-995-3282. That number again is 443-995-3282. We've also created a page on our website that will give you a better idea of how much meaning life can have when you choose God. Visit ccaac.org and click on the Meaning of Life to learn more. That website again is ccaac.org. That's all we have time for today. But join us next time right here on Light of the Word, illuminating the heart of God.
You have made the